Welcome to Money Isn't Everything. I'm Mary Wisniewski, Cornerstone Advisors, editor-at-large, and host of the show that explores early-stage ideas that could, if not already, shake up financial services. Today on the show is Jacob Zak, who founded an early-stage fintech company that recently rolled out a credit card that rewards consumers for their auto spend. And that includes their auto leases and loans, gas, auto repair, and way more than that, but all under the big umbrella of auto. It's called Fasten Rewards Visa Card, and the product is hitting at a very interesting time. With a slew of auto tariffs already in effect or others expected to take effect, the cost of car ownership is only going up, and that includes the parts required to, repair a vehicle. And Fasten's ambition is to pick up the bill, but for auto. We talk about rewards for things that are more essential than eating out, auto tariffs, romanticizing road trips, and what it's like building a startup in an especially turbulent year. Here's our convo. Jacob, welcome to Money Isn't Everything. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, well, it's an exciting time. You're building the startup. You're just having launched. And not to mention, auto tariffs are on the minds of many and have a lot of consequence to, everybody with a car. So lots to unpack. But I guess first off, congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a very exciting journey. When your wife is 3 months pregnant with your first child and you tell her, hey, I want to start a company, she might think of you like you're a little crazy, but here we are, great baby, great company, and things are going well. So it's exciting.
I like it. Yeah. Just add to the pressure cooker. Why not? You never know.
Yeah. When it rains, it pours. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I've seen in your marketing material, and it's something that as some of our listeners will know of, is the build. You're like the build for auto. I've seen the phrasing, and it's really interesting to think of this, because I wanted to start there. First of all, how long have you been working toward this concept?
Yeah, so I've been in fintech for, before this, but came to this idea when I was about 2 years ago. I left my last job to start Fasten, and my wife was having a baby. We were having a baby, moving to the burbs, and I was like, hey, I'm getting rewarded for my Starbucks and my Netflix. Why not the most expensive things, right? And so obviously built an amazing company, and I'd be lying if I would have said they did not give us some inspiration. But so I really wanted to kind of take a model that really had worked in a lot of different areas and then bring it into auto, both on the loyalty side and really on the personal finance side as well.
Well, I want to get into this, because why do you think it's been sort of this untapped rewards area?
So auto, I think there's something to be said about just auto being, kind of very disjointed, right? You have the OEMs and the brands, but you also have the dealerships, right? And so you can be in any kind of specific area, and, it could be in Minneapolis or St. Louis or Oklahoma City or Hartford, Connecticut, and you can have a bunch of different options. So, our goal is to build brand loyalty, kind of take this model of, get rewarding consumers for their auto loans, but also build brand loyalty for the dealerships as well that we're partnering with.
It's interesting because, we definitely do have some bank and credit union listeners, and, so they're probably the comparable of the dealerships in this model, because it's they have the data on their customers. They know when, in that case, it'd be oh, maybe I need a loan at this moment. But in this case, it's hey, you definitely need an oil change. I have that information. Perhaps this is time to market something, then use your points. But am I thinking about this right? Or yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So, what the card is itself, and we are, as far as I know, the only credit card that will reward consumers as they pay off their auto loans and leases. And so our whole thing is we're brand agnostic. You can have a Ford, you can have a Toyota, you can have a Mercedes, you can have an Audi, but we're also lender agnostic. So if you get your auto loan from your bank or from an OEM's captive or from your credit union, that doesn't really matter. And then the whole key is being able to use your points broadly. So we want consumers to be able to use their points in a lot of different ways. So the consumer can use their points for traditional products redemption categories like travel and hotel, but they can also redeem them at their dealership group. So if you are connected to, most people will have a few different groups, but your group, let's say it's Mary's Ford, Mary's Toyota, Mary's Audi, you can go to any of Mary's stores and use those points for service, maintenance, or down payments. So we really want to be the first credit card where you can go on your dream vacation or buy your dream car, just beyond being a traditional travel card.
Yeah. And And auto specifically, I feel like, well, I am someone, I do have a car. I live in LA. I want
Yeah.
to, and I grew up in Michigan, but I'm not like, if I could walk everywhere, I would. But that's because I lived in New York City everywhere. But also, on the other hand, the opposite of me is like, oh, people love auto. They get, they're so, it's like one of those obsession things for a
Yeah.
sizable amount of people. So I guess I'm also curious, like, how do you think, you know, is this like a passionate audience you're going after? Is that like, yes.
Totally. So I think it
Mm-hmm.
actually can be both, right? Like what it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to is this is driving in America, right? So actually
Mm-hmm.
like this whole thing really kind of came about because I was living in Brooklyn. I was moving to the burbs and my wife and I, who hadn't had cars for a decade, right? Both now needed cars. And so I go to the dealership and I go and I buy the cars and like that process, the dealerships have kind of like their own headaches, which, I think that people,
Lots of
I
paper.
think
Lots of paper.
lots of
Yeah.
paperwork and it can take hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking to myself, hey, I'm now getting rewarded for my Starbucks, my Netflix, my gas, my insurance, now my rent. And also, now why can I not get rewarded for my auto loan and lease, right? And so auto loans and leases are the second largest form of non-discretionary spend that people are not getting, traditionally not getting rewarded for after housing. And so whether you're a car aficionado or just a someone who drives to work every day, most Americans have a car, right? I mean, New York City is kind of like the only real exception, right? So whether you're living in LA or whether you're living in Boston or Maine or anywhere in between, you have your car. And so whether you're a car, you like to work on your car or it's just a mode of transportation, you have a car, you generally have an auto loan or lease. And so now Fasten is really the card that can reward you for your auto loans and leases. And then beyond that, right? Like there's no real credit card that's holistic for your auto spend. So instead
Mm-hmm.
of giving multiple points at restaurants like most traditional cards, we really want more multiple points for your auto related spend. So parking, gas, insurance, tolls, maintenance, car washes, right? Things that you are going to have and are going to spend money on as a consumer, right? It's not just owning a car, it's all of the extra stuff. And if you're someone who wants to soup up your Jeep, great, we'll give you multiple points on that. But then beyond that, if you just have your insurance and your gas, we'll give you multiple points on those too. So it's like, there were gas cards that were really kind of popular in the 90s. There still exist, but there was no real holistic auto card. And we really want to be that first holistic auto card for everyone who has an auto loan or lease, which is really everyone. So it's broad usage, broad redemption.
Yeah, you're right. My dad is one of the people with the gas card.
Yeah,
He's always
exactly. And
excited
now we
about
can
it.
do
I'm like, what is this?
and now gas and gas, insurance, maintenance, right? Like, it's not just gas and insurance. You got to go and get your car fixed. You got to go and get your car, worked up, worked on annually. And so those things, that maintenance is not going anywhere. So we're
No,
here to help with
and
that.
yeah, and the price is going up because I know like the auto tariffs. I mean, it's such a still in a bit of yo-yo, not necessarily with
Yeah.
auto, but I have been seeing like articles. I think the last one was in NPR about like how this is just everything's going up, like the repairs on your
Yeah.
vehicle, then your insurance. So like the price of auto is just like up.
Yeah,
Yes,
totally. And you living in LA, I would assume that your insurance has really gone up a lot, right? So
yes,
your auto insurance and probably all of your insurance, frankly. But yeah,
yeah.
that's the whole thing, right? Like auto tariffs are coming, whether we like them or not, auto tariffs are going to make your car more expensive, especially, your real whole concept is you're spending this money, you really should go and get these points. And then you can also now like, to get your brakes changed could be like $1,200, right? Now you
Hmm.
can say, hey, I have these points. I want to go and use them toward my brake change. I can do that, or I can save them and use them towards a flight or my next car. So it's a lot of different ways to use the points, and it doesn't really even have to be within your auto spend. But
To walk me through, because I'm really curious about like how
yeah,
to design a rewards program or what points equal what. Like what kind of thinking goes into that, or how did you design
yeah.
your program? Yeah.
So we actually worked with a guy, Scott, who came with the executive editor of the Points Guy,
Oh
and he
yes.
helped us really develop our rewards program. Scott, shout out Scott, he's great. And so the whole thing is you want it to be broad enough for consumers, but also like that broad enough that people want to use it both on the redemption and the point accrual side, right? So if
Hmm.
you just have some people might sign up for a credit card that they end up just throwing in the drawer and never using, right? So the whole thing is having regular use. And on our end, right, like you're getting your gas and you're getting your insurance every month. right? You're
Hmm.
spending money on that every month. So why not go and get these bonus points? Because if you're using a Chase card or you're using your Amex card, you're only getting 1 point for your gas and your insurance and your car washes. With the Fasten card, you're now getting, 3 points with all of those. And so really kind of going after this recurring spend that isn't really what highlighted in most credit cards, which are really going after restaurant spend.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it is interesting to give like points for like things you have to buy anyway. And I am
Yeah.
like curious about that in general, and especially rent as well with built. So no, I think that's really well, let's talk about a bit on the other hand, like, people are really stacking their credit card debt. The credit card debt is like up as well. Any advice
Yeah.
for the people? I know there's like the type that's like, hey, I know how to game the points thing. Certainly any like points guide readers should know how
Yeah.
to stack their
Yeah.
cards. But yeah.
Totally, right? Like, and I think that part of that is like we're going to give you points for everything. We're a Visa card, but we are going to give bonus points for your auto spend, right? So I think people are going to see these kind of like optimized cards for industries really
Mhm.
kind of coming out in the future, right? And so we're going after auto. Auto spend is 5% of US GDP, and I think like there are a lot of restaurant cards, but there are going to be different cards that are coming out for all of these different categories, right? So there's going to be ones that are coming out for like sports, like literally like you're a big sports fan, you like to get a lot of tickets from Ticketmaster or Game Time or whomever, right? Like there'll be credit cards for that, right? I think like this is something that you and I are going to see across a lot of different industries, are these like more verticalized credit cards that are a way for people to go out there and save and really like save money on things that they care about. And for us, you might care about your car or you might not be a big car person, but either way, you're spending the money. So, that's why I really like this category because it's broad, no matter if you go racing every weekend or you're just picking up your kids and driving them to school.
Here's the one segment on the show that we do, but you already spoiled the plot because you kind of already said it, but that's what you said. So you sort of said it here, but you've said it before. And I just want to like bump into the quote, which is you get credit card points for your Starbucks and your Netflix. Why not for one of the most expensive things that you own?
Yeah,
And yeah. So I know you said you've been working on Fasten for like 2 years, but was there that single moment where you're like, oh, this is ignored? Or is there something in your past where you're,
totally. Yeah, so I was living in, New York City, didn't have a car. I went to college in DC, didn't have a car. And then my wife and I were having a baby and moving from Brooklyn to Connecticut where we needed a car. And so we both went to get cars. We went on to buy cars. And I was like, there are a few things that could really be improved upon in this dealership experience. One, you're not getting points for your auto spend, right? You're not getting points for your auto loans and leases. You are spending that money anyway. It is the second largest form of household debt in America. So, as I mentioned, you get rewarded for Starbucks and Netflix. Why not the most expensive things you own? But then it's also the ancillary products, right? It's not owning your car is not just buying the car. It's the gas, it's the insurance, it's the car washes, it's all the other things that you spend money on. And so why? And there's really no credit card that gives like gives points back, bonus points, like 3 points per dollar for your holistic auto spend. And that's what we're doing with Fasten. And then people don't always just want to redeem for travel and gift cards, right? So that is like the traditional model, travel,
Mm-hmm.
hotel, gift cards. But auto spend and auto expenses are going up, right? To get your brakes changed could be around $1,200. And so if you have points that you're saying like, hey, I like, we're doing a different type of vacation this year, or we have this large expense coming up for my auto. Why not be able to use those points for your auto related expenses, right? Accidents happen, things happen, people need to have like, have issues with their car. And so unexpected things you can now use your fastened points towards at your dealership group. So it's a retention tool for your dealership group for service and maintenance, but also using your points for your potential down payment as well.
And for distribution, that's always the hardest thing of like,
Yeah.
building your audience, especially as early stage fintech. I'm really how on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is it to sell to like a dealership? Like, I imagine that's one of the thornier challenges. Yes.
That's a great question. So, some dealerships, dealerships are a really interesting industry because you have your local business that's might be in its like third or fourth generation, and it's a
Hmm.
lot of family businesses. So you got the guy in their 30s, their 20s, and their dad in their 60s and their 70s, and possibly even their grandpa in their 70s, 80s, or 90s, right? And so it's a lot of like family politics. Luckily, I come from a family business. My dad, my grandpa, and my brother all work together, so I do have like a few different ways of working that. But you want to show that dealership loyalty is down, right? That there are ways to get people to come back using there are ways to get people to come back that are not non like traditional. And credit card points is a model that has worked in many other industries, right? Especially hotels and airlines, where you do have these like once or twice a year large recurring purchases, which is your maintenance on our end.
Hmm.
And so really like going to the dealership and saying, hey, this model has worked. There's a reason why every flight you're on, you're offered an airline card, or every time you stay at a hotel, you're offered a hotel card, or even traditional retail, right? Like, you go to a lot of these stores and you're offered credit cards because it's an incredible way to increase loyalty. And it's also an incredible way to gamify it. So, you can now, the dealers can also now have a better connection with their customer through the Fasten card and say, hey, Mary has 150,000 credit card points. It's time for Mary to get her brakes changed. Now, traditionally, dealers will just send you a postcard. Now they can say, hey, come on in, basically get these repairs for free. And now that's a way for you to come in to a dealership instead of going to, like a local mom and pop, auto body shop or repair shop.
Yeah. And what I mean, I'm kind of curious. I'm thinking more of the app, but like the language that you're using for the consumer. I mean, what kind of tone are you taking with like, yeah.
Yeah, that this is, it's driving in America, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's meant to be fun. It's, these moments when you're in the car with your kids and you're on the open road, like everyone loves a good road trip. And I think it's about kind of like tapping into that, right? Tapping into, you want to be fun and you want to have people be free. And there are kind of two types of credit cards. There's cash back and there's aspirational. And we definitely lean into that aspirational style, which is more the travel, the open road, right? But also like letting people understand that our prime value prop is that you're spending the money, right? It's a 0 to 1. As far as I know, there's no one else that's rewarding you for your auto loans and lease instead of your Fasten card. And there's no one credit card that's really rewarding you, giving you bonus points for all of that auto related spend except for the Fasten card. So, we can be your card, and then maybe if you have a 15-year-old and we might be your card for everything, but really in perpetuity, we want to be your card for all of that auto related spend, which is 5, 6, $700 a month, on top of your auto loan.
I guess I'm not just like build is my brain, but I know they do a lot of different things like build their community or like here's like a special event that you can like participate as a member. And I'm just kind of curious, what are your ambitions for like fostering a fasten community?
Yeah.
Should you have that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we actually are already in discussions, right? Like we're already in discussions about kind of like what we can do having programs, right? So, there are things you're going to be able to redeem for beyond just your dealership, at your dealership or for travel, right? So
Hmm.
there are these like amazing race getaways that you can do to F1 races around the world or NASCAR races around the world. And you will also be able to use your points down the road. That's the goal for this fasting card. And we really want to be like, doing things like helping you with your, little things like helping you with like your monthly parking or your gas, but also, having ways that we can help people, pay off their auto loans and really kind of help with that affordability, like have raffles or have things. And, I think Built's a great company. They got a lot of like the loyalty down, but there's a whole other category like in auto related attractions and events that we can really dive into. The world is our oyster, right? I think like also we could do it in the travel sense, right? Traveling is not only hopping on a plane. Traveling is road tripping across the country with your friends. And and these are things that we can go and we can help and we can set up experiences for.
And I'm really curious because it's something I like to talk to entrepreneurs a lot about, but like just such a, I guess we'll just go with the word remarkable year in terms of
Mhm.
like, well, in terms of everything really. But,
Yeah.
we've mentioned the tariffs. certainly uncertainty seems to be the word that is used most often with the economy. But like, you're building a startup, never easy.
Never
And
easy.
never easy.
Yeah. Never
There's
easy. Yeah.
there's a bit more chaos here. And I'm just wondering, one, how do you stay grounded, and how do you see? Because I know it's like having this plan in place, but the macro forces are
Totally.
a gamble. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think to answer your first question, staying grounded, right? I think I mentioned in the beginning, but my wife was 3 months pregnant when I told her I wanted to start this company. And now I have a 13-month-old.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what it comes down to is you could be having a stressful day and you can be having it, but like the baby is kind of your top priority, right? Like my top priority. And so I make sure that I block off my calendar in the morning and in the afternoon to make sure that I have time, with the baby when I'm not working. And then when she goes to sleep, I can, get back to work. But making sure that like I have that family time every day is like a real key priority for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also just like, with the uncertainty is the prices might go up but like we are dealing with inflation that we were already in the past have been dealing with inflation, and whether the tariffs stay or whether they go, right, like the cost of cars are probably not going to go down, right? Like inflation generally like only goes, inflation only goes one direction, costs generally only go one direction, and things don't generally go down. And so, really thinking about whether either way, whether the price of cars go up 2% or 20% or, or somewhere in between, like the cost is something that consumers are going to be spending money on. And so, I keep on saying it to my team, but in general, like, people are spending the money anyway. They really might as well be getting the points because now you can go and use those points in a million different ways, and you'll get rewarded in ways that you've never been rewarded for before
And
previously.
Jacob, what kind of borrower are you targeting, especially at the early stage of the launch? And I
Yeah.
mean that. Mm-hmm.
So we're Prime Plus. So we're going
Mm-hmm.
we're going after, Prime Plus, people who like to have multiple credit cards. There are other products out there for subprime, but our initial launch is Prime Plus and was Prime Plus.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing that now.
Yeah.
And I'm also curious, like your experience within fintech and payments.
Yeah.
When was that? What brought you originally into the fintech world?
Yeah, so I've always been in early stage tech. I was in started off in ed tech. Very luckily, was 12th employee at a unicorn called Newzella, which is if you have kids in elementary or middle or high school, you've probably heard of it.
Yeah.
But then I co-founded a company in the medical device space that unfortunately did not go the way that I would have hoped. But honestly, like everything's a really good learning experience, and in the moment, like things can be stressful, but in retrospect, they're great. And so when I was kind of figuring out what was next, it was COVID. I was stuck at home like everyone else. And then I got brought on as the second employee at Forage, which is a payment processor
Oh yeah.
for Snap and EBT. So
Mm-hmm.
we were basically
Oh
the
wow.
tech.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that really kind of brought me into the fintech world. And so I was the second employee there. The company went through Y Combinator, raised a good Series A. I led sales for, I think two of their largest customers, which is Thrive and GoPuff. But then, at a certain point, I looked at my wife and I was like, I think I want to be a founder again. I think it's just something that's in my blood. I come from a pretty entrepreneurial family, and there's at a certain point you're like, hey, your mind starts racing, like, hey, you got a good idea. There's no time like the present. Might as well just go for it.
Yeah. No, that is a true entrepreneurial um, state of mind or,
Yeah,
or
totally.
requirement or requirement.
Yeah, a lot of the ideas aren't always great, but like when you
Yeah.
find one that you really like, and you think like, hey, you gotta want to go run with it, you go run with it. And that's kind of where I was. And we were all stuck at home with COVID and all had, figuring out what we were doing. And I kind of threw out this idea and it seemed to make sense.
Yeah. And so you've identified the points in the auto as like a gap, but I'm curious, like broader than that, do you see like in payments broadly, is there anything like really striking your fancy of like, oh, this is interesting? Other idea, either a startup or like a pilot that you're seeing, or on the other hand, you're like, oh, this also needs to be fixed.
Oh, I think like as like as I mentioned, like if someone built C-suite are investors in us, right? Like and they're like their COO and their CCO, and am like getting really into mortgages, right? And I like love this idea of like, of having these recurring payments that you are getting rewarded for. Beyond that, I just think like, you know, cross-border payments are an incredibly interesting thing. But I also think like it's a lot of the back end tech, right? Like
Hmm.
fraud is always, especially like when a product like ours, fraud is always a moving target, right? And AI in many ways is going to change the world. But I also think like the speed to market with AI is also changing the world. What used to take a company about a year and a half now could take a company 3 months, right? And so but that also means that it takes like the people who want to commit the fraud, even quicker as well, and maybe even shorter as well. So, a lot of these AI companies kind of like dealing with this incredibly fast moving target of fraud is something that I have a lot of interest in, especially just like the nature of of our business.
Yeah. Oh, I believe it. And that is something I know the whole industry is very curious about fraud and its ever evolving
Yeah,
ways and how to
totally.
hopefully get in front of it. Well, um, one last question for you, but before I do, open it up to you. If someone wants to reach out to you or get in touch with you, how should they do that? And also any closing thoughts you wanted to make sure to mention?
Yeah. Yeah, my name is Jacob Zacks. I'm the only Jacob Zacks in the entire world. So you can find me on LinkedIn or Jacob at fasten.cc or for dot credit card. Get in touch. We are really looking forward to, we're looking forward to seeing where this thing can go. And, especially as the price of cars really are in flux and really don't understand. We really want to care about how people are spending their money and making sure people are getting their money back. Um, but and getting points back. But as I think like we are in a kind of crazy world, right? And whether it's tariffs or before the tariffs, right? Like cars are part of the American psyche, right? Whether you are a car person or not, you're always going to need a new car. You're always going to be having your next car, whether it's you, your kids, your spouse, even if you're using even if it's 10 years down the road, if it's 10 years down the road, there's still ways to be rewarded, right? And I think that people are going to see that rewards are going to come in really kind of like awesome ways in the future. And we're really excited to be at the forefront of that.
No, well, again, congratulations. And
Thanks.
one last little question, which is what's the image on your phone's lock screen?
Oh, my baby.
Ah, I was
There it
thinking it was going to be
is.
your baby, or I was like, oh, it's going to be a car.
Yeah, the baby. Don't tell my wife. Then if you unlock it, the dog.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the dog is important.
yeah. I know, and yeah, no, it's 13 months, best 13 months of my life, and even with all of the stress of being a founder, I really, honestly, and truly mean that. So,
Well, congratulations on
thanks,
all
Mary.
of the above. And thanks so much for being on Money's and Everything. It's been a real treat to be able to
Yeah,
catch up with you.
thanks for having me.
Okay, so one thing that really stood out to me is the need to block your time for your biggest priority. And I think it's really cool for Jacob. It's his baby because that sounds right. So I'm taking that lesson away from me from today's conversation. And I hope to see you 2 weeks from now because I'm in conversation with Ben Hoff, who's the founder and CEO of Atticus. And this is a fintech startup that's building an inheritance platform. And we talk about the way inheritance might change as, Gen Z ages, and also why you can gift Atticus instead of, say, send someone flowers during a funeral time. Catch you then.